job. You know, we've recycled our concrete really well, and I see the plastic bag issue coming up in the paper today in Canada, which I'm rolling my eyes over. I mean, so we're trying to get real, true contributions to sustainability. And I want to stop there because there's a lot more to it. I'd be glad to discuss it with you later. But that we're trying to get that better view of what sustainability really means and what a true contribution means to sustainable infrastructure.
If I can just add a little further step to that, having watched what was happening in the United States with ISI and the three groups that did that there, ACEC, APWA, and ASCE.
Yeah, and Harvard as well.
And Harvard now, yes. We actually have had a first conversation to think about a sustainability rating for infrastructure for Canada. CSCE, CPWA, CCA, the Canadian Construction Association, and the ACEC, the Association of Consulting Engineering Companies, have had conversation already. We've had conversation with the folks at ISI, but we're also looking at what is happening in the UK. They have a sequel rating system, what's happening in Australia and New Zealand. We're looking at different rating systems that are around, and we want to create a Canadian rating system or a Canadianized rating system, but it's just a dialogue at the moment. So it is a rating system for sustainability for infrastructure. Maybe more to come as time goes on. There's a question here.
Thank you very much. I have a comment on Guy's question whether to pick infrastructure over health. So it looks to me that at the end of the day, it will be public who will be paying for either health or the infrastructure. Either you will prioritize the health or you will prioritize the infrastructure.
It's,
and after that, I have a question about with Bill.
It's not my question, and actually, what I'm saying is that in 2014, this is what is going to be debated, between the federal government, the various agencies that fund whether health or whether infrastructure, and the provincial governments, and they will decide in that year, how much money goes towards health. And is it to maintain a certain standard or level of service with respect to waiting times in emergency rooms, or those kind of measures that they've been talking about? Or are they going to be investing in infrastructure? And what is the balance? What I'm saying is that 2014, we've got two major competing needs for renewal programs. How is the balance going to be determined? Right. That I don't know. And the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is working on that, looking at what should be the principles of the next generation of programs, for example. But that's the reality of the way that the funding goes towards these programs.
Sure. To Bill, I saw your presentation, very nice presentation. You mentioned that there is a $2.2 trillion deficit on the infrastructure. Correct me if I'm wrong, America is under debt more than 13 trillion. So how you are going to cope up with all these issues?
You got the answers for your government there, Bill?
Yeah. We have a collection outside, as you guys leave. Now, we've been talking about that number for years, and it's a very large number, and nobody does anything about it, and it'll get larger the next time they do the survey. I think we're trying to address it in terms of money saved, which is, threw up a slide in the middle of the presentation that showed what ASCE is trying to do to convince people that investing in that kind of effort is going to save you money in the long run, but that's so far fallen on deaf ears. I saw a presentation, maybe Ian's or someone in a prior day here that said people only deal in the short term. I mean, they do really well getting early returns, but this long-term investment, I believe it was Ian, talking about that, or Guy rather, was how people think. So we'll just keep putting up large numbers and see what happens. I don't really have an answer.
Can I just add to that, I think one of the things we often fail to do in asset management, and in particular if you break it down into the actual hard infrastructure, is we try and have big impressive numbers, and it just creates a complete disjoint with community. One of the best efforts I've seen to actually make it accessible, I think it's the city of Hamilton in Ontario, one of the cities in that part, and they actually broke down and said, well, what infrastructure have you got? They didn't try and say, we've got, you know, X billion dollars of this and so many billion dollars of that. They actually said, on average, outside your house gate, you know, your 20 or 30 metres of frontage, you've got $5,000 worth of roads, you've got $2,000 worth of this, and then they actually went on to say, and to keep it going, we spend $2 per day on this item, we spend $1 per day on that item, and they put it in the same list, and the average Canadian spends $3 per day on the Tim Hortons and a donut, you know, and it was actually put in terms that made you actually realise I'm getting quite a good value. And I think often as engineers, it's that whole history of we want to build the biggest, the best, the greatest. We try and have the most biggest numbers. And if you said to someone, you know, we owe 2.2 trillion, or we want 2.2 trillion, no one can relate to it. But if you actually start putting it in debt per person, and that's been an interesting debate in New Zealand about the debt in our municipalities. At a big picture, it means nothing. It's not until they actually say the debt per person in this municipality is $10,000 versus over here it's 2,000. You know, suddenly you start to make it, you know, accessible in terms of information.
Any other questions here? I've got one here, and we're getting close to the time, so be careful. I'm going to close us off within a few moments.
Hi. Okay, my first question is to Guy. I'm just wondering, you talked about how the municipalities were not really included in the federal government's decisions as much before, but now they're like working much more with the provinces and the municipalities. But I'm wondering, how are the First Nations communities being included in those discussions of infrastructure management?
Good question. The small communities panel that we had yesterday or the day before, I don't remember, it seems so long now. Elmer Lickers was here. I don't know if you had a chance to attend that part. He represents the Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation, and they're an organization in Ontario that provide technical services to all the First Nations communities in Ontario. What they are doing and working with other First Nations is, and through the Assembly of First Nations, dealing with Aboriginal affairs and looking at asset management in terms of being a decision-making tool. So that as opposed to just the way the funding is through Aboriginal affairs in you know, whatever formulas they use, is to start integrating asset management in there. There is connection between what municipalities do and what First Nations also do in terms of asset management when the two communities are really close together or one provides service to the other. There are municipalities that provide services to First Nations, and there's also First Nations that provide services to municipalities. So they're very well connected. In the big picture, you know, there's more of a disconnect, but the presence of for example, Elmer Lickers the other day talking about this, and he's getting involved more and more into organizations like CNEM and so on. There is this connection that is being made.
Okay, and I have one more question for Bill. You mentioned that you work with, or you've worked with Engineers Without Borders.
Yes.
And that in that you guys have done a lot of work with bringing water to developing countries. And so I'm wondering, how do you include your asset management ideas in that, so you're not just going in to bring water in and then leaving them with infrastructure that they don't really know how to manage?
Excellent question. The simple form is we help communities and bring fresh water, but the actual philosophy of the organizations, and it's more than just EWB USA, it's Canada and lots of other countries. We, in a sense, adopt, although that's not a politically correct word, a community for at least 5 years. And we come in first understanding what they think their needs are, not telling them what their needs are. And we, out of that, create solutions that they, in fact, can manage. And we have them build the solutions hand in hand with our people. Our students and professionals come down, work in the communities actually, and help them learn how to use it and how to build it. And once we leave, it's usually after several projects have been done, and we have a group of people within there that know how to manage it, know how to deal with it, know how to fix it, and continue on. And so that's the way we've been working for the last 10 years now. This is our 10th anniversary.
Just perhaps if I can add to that, I do a lot of work with the World Bank and transport projects in developing nations, and we've just been rewriting their guidelines for performance-based contracting. And one of the benefits we see of the outsourcing model that often goes with the World Bank funding is that it drives good asset management, and we can actually use it as often we do a small pilot project. So when we're doing in north of India, we're only looking at a few hundred kilometres of their road network, but it's got a 10-year sort of horizon on the project, so it's upgraded, look after it for a long time. But it's also enabling them to understand how to do good asset management that they can put into the rest of their network. So it actually, it's almost, yes, we use it as a pilot, but to create the asset management skills that they can go elsewhere. And even just simply trying to establish what level of service they can actually afford in many places.
Thank you. I see about 3 minutes left. I do my math and I see 6 speakers. That means 30 seconds each. And I wondered about one last comment about what, in looking ahead in the next 5 years, how would you characterize the biggest challenge that your country has going forward? And it might be a one-word answer. It might be political, it's technical, it's process, or it could be a combination of those things or some other aspect of that. So mindful of the 3-minute, 30-second timelines, I'm going to start with you, Rice, if you wanted to respond to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned in my introduction, I've worked in a lot of industries, and one of the things we see in the world I work in is how lots of different industries are, I guess, learning from each other. So I think the biggest challenge we have is providing common languages to let different industry sectors learn from each other. And I still work in industries where you see some practices and you just think, well, why don't they do this? Where other industries clearly do these things. But those same industries have other areas where they're very strong at that other industries haven't considered. So I think our ability to transfer practices between industries is where big benefits are going to be had.
Good. Sounds like a language issue in some cases, about terms of technical language. Dr. Lee, can I ask you about China?
Okay. While we are not slowing down our pace of infrastructure development, we start to realize we have to